A big thank you to Jero for sponsoring today's video on Patreon. Malcolm versus Jodah, with some slow protection, but we can get it down on turn 2 and then hopefully protect it across turn 3, so we are trying this. Our opponent's starting off with the World Tree, and we managed to get into a 4th land, so yeah, sticking with the typical plan of getting down Malcolm at the end of our opponent's 2nd turn. A Farseek is going to ramp our opponent and help fix the colours, and manage to dodge any spot removal from our opponent, of course, so in the spirit of that we'll hold up the Supreme Verdict, or the Supreme Will, counters any spell, unless our opponent wants to pay 3. We want to put the first counter onto our commander, and I don't think we're going to get a chance to cast the Rhystic Study here, so that's probably what we're discarding. Tezzeret's Gambit for some Proliferate is nice, so yeah, get rid of the enchantment. So what we'll probably do is go for this when our commander has 3 counters on it, and then swing in with the Malcolm, put the 4th one on it, and then we can get Jingataxias or something like that going. Imperial Seal from our opponent suggests that this is a very strong deck. So we'll just hold up our Supreme Will, continue to try and dissuade our opponent from doing anything to us, throw out the Nykthos, and continue to put the counters on Malcolm. Drew into the Overflowing Insight, which will keep our hand full. Put the 2nd counter on Malcolm, a Dig Through Time. Yeah, I think we're fine to get rid of the Baral's Expertise here. Our opponent draws into whatever he just tutored for with the seal. Okay, and there's a show and tell. Each player may put an artifact, creature, enchantment or land from their hand onto the battlefield. Can they beat a Jingataxias? Probably. Yeah, let's go for the Supreme Will onto that. Could go for the commit, but I don't really want my opponent to have a show and tell, especially if he's tutoring for it. Alright, awesome. So, managed to get into another land again. So, play the land. Let's go for Tezzeret's Gambit. We will go for Phyrexian Mana, and then 3 generic. Alright, and that is a Teferi's Ageless Insight. Proliferate onto the Malcolm. There's obviously a Mind Stone there as well. So it looks as though we're going for Jingataxias. May well be that our opponent just wipes the board next turn, but we'll try to land the Jingataxias. So we deal combat damage to a player, triggers the Malcolm again for a 4th time, and Experimental Augury is what we draw into here, so discard Jingataxias, and because it has 4 counters we'll be able to cast this without paying the mana cost. Cannot protect our board, unfortunately, but we do draw 7 cards at the beginning of the end step, which amazingly doesn't get us into any counter magic. Okay, so we have to get rid of 6 cards here. Let's go for the commit. Mind Stone can go. I think Dig Through Time can go. Doesn't look like our opponent's going to play little permanents, so the Proliferate won't be all that much use. Alright, and looks like our opponent didn't have anything because he's decided to scoop on us. Yeah, might have just gone for the Teferi's Ageless Insight there as well, I'm not sure, but anyway, we will play another game. Playing against the same player again, and yeah, we've got mana there, but we're going to have to wait a few turns to get it going, because I think we just go for the Malcolm trick again. I'm hoping my opponent has a lack of spot removal in the deck. We are on the play again. Alright, a Flux Channeler is a means of proliferating, so can play the rocks into that maybe. Yeah, we'll go for the Malcolm, might be able to loot into a land. A Vamp Tutor from our opponent this time. Hopefully just going for a land with that. And then seeing an Arcane Signet. So see if our opponent has 1 mana spot removal for the Malcolm. Doesn't seem as though he does. Getting to another land is good, so can maybe just get down the Flux Channeler here, that does make a difference, then play some rocks into it. Swing at our opponent for the first loop. Alright, and there's our friend Jingataxias again, so yeah, I think we go for the Celestus getting discarded here, simply because it's a bit more expensive than we'd like. And no means of protecting our commander, just drop out the Flux Channeler so that we can get some Proliferate going next turn. If we can top deck a land next turn, again, that would be really good, because then we'll have 4 mana, go down to 3 mana after playing an Arcane Signet, then play Steady Progress. We'll have enough on the Malcolm in order to get the triggers off here, although Jodah does have flying, so not going to be able to get through until we get some kind of unblockable going here. Alright, we do manage to get into a land, so let's go for the Arcane Signet first. Proliferate with the Flux Channeler, and then just go for the steady progress at instant speed, I imagine. I don't think our opponent's going to do anything while the Malcolm's being held back, and he might assume that we don't have a means of cheating out anything anyway. Maybe we can get into some kind of unblockable and surprise our opponent next turn. We do have means of unblockable in the deck, just haven't seen it as of yet, unfortunately. We are just 1 mana away from hard casting the Consecrated Sphinx for some card draw though, so that could give our opponent a headache by itself. Depends on what our opponent can cheat in here, really. Oof, getting a time stretch, which is 2 extra turns in a row. So our opponent's free to swing in because he's about to untap a couple of times. Could have gone for steady progress there, try and draw in some free counter magic, but I'd rather try my luck here, I think. Our opponent's probably got it at this point. A free Maelstrom Wanderer might get into turns as well. Okay, he's got a deflecting swat, which is not good with a Cascade trigger. Managing to get into a Muldrotha as well. And these creatures will have haste, so I'm swinging for a lot of damage here. He will get another turn after this, so I'll hold back on the blocks. We plummet down to 19. So our opponent might dedicate a bunch of creatures to the red zone in order to deal lethal to us. I think we're probably still done for here, even if we do manage to get a trigger off with Malcolm. The Cultivate going to continue to ramp means the Jodah's ability is switched off, I think. I think our opponent's only got 4 mana available here. Okay, Fist of Suns, so yeah. Let's see if our opponent wants to swing in with everything here. He does seemingly. Nope, pulling back the Jodah correctly. So let's go for a steady progress in order to draw and proliferate. Alright, and we were just drawing into a Serum Snare anyway. So we can bounce the Jodah away with that at least. Let's block the Maelstrom Wanderer and take 6 to the Muldrotha. Okay, our opponent not doing anything with the 3 cards in hand. So let's go for Serum Snare onto the Jodah to bounce it out of the way. And that lands, so we're able to hold up Supreme Will as well in order to counter something next turn. Might be able to wriggle out of this, but I'm not hopeful. Yeah, what do we cheat down here? We'll definitely go for the Alrund's Epiphany so that we can get an extra turn. Malcolm hits and gets a 5th counter. We draw into a land, discard the Alrund's Epiphany so that we can cast it for free. And we do get the bird tokens from that ready for chump blocking with, which does make a difference. Drop a land. And do we just play the Supreme Will to try and get another card in town? We've got pretty damn good cards here anyway, so I think we'll just leave it. Alright, there's a counter spell, so apparently should have gone for the Supreme Will. And during our second turn here, swinging in with the Commander. And again, Malcolm going to get a trigger. That's a Sapphire Medallion, making our blue spells cost 1 less. I might play that. Discard the Jingataxius. And play the Jingataxius, thanks to the North of 4 counters on the Malcolm. Yeah, let's get down the Sapphire Medallion. We'll be able to play both Counterspell and Supreme Will that way and help protect our board. And then at the end of the turn we are going to draw 7. We'll have to... no, we won't have to discard 3. We've got the Reliquary Tower. Managed to draw into Force of Will as well, which is excellent. The new one in Chimil, the Inner Sun, or Kimil, the Inner Sun. Not sure how you say that. But we'll get some Cascade going ourselves. So we may well be able to pull this back here. Noteworthy, we've also got into the Tetsuko in order to make our Malcolm unblockable against the Jodah. So there's the Jodah. Not going to waste counter magic on it, I don't think, now that we've got Tetsuko. Noteworthy, they will be able to swing in with it, but we can take some commander damage there, I think. Holding back the Jodah anyway, because they're worried about Malcolm. We will chump block. And our opponent does have to discard at the end of the turn thanks to the Jingataxius, so we'll see what he's holding on to. Decided not to cast anything. Had just mana really. A Mana Crypt, had a Fierce Guardianship, good to see the back of that. Could have gone for the Supreme Will there, but our opponent would have countered it anyway, so I don't think it matters. Alright, so I think the land for this turn will have to be the Nykthos. And we can play the Tetsuko in order to get our commander through. And I wasted a mana there because that only costs 1 mana. So yeah, we'll go for the Supreme Will now. Alright, and there is Emrakul, the Promised End, so happily take control of my opponent's next turn, I think. Not worthy, our opponent will get an additional turn though. And we've got Devotion of 4 here, so that means that we can get down a 5-mana Consecrated Sphinx and rely on the Force of Will in order to protect ourselves. Our opponent's in top deck mode, so I think we need to try and catch up here. Not going to swing in with the Jingataxius, might be a good blocker, and the Jodah's going to be able to kill it off anyway. So Malcolm able to get through thanks to the Tetsuko. And we deal damage, so Malcolm triggers again, draw into the Muldrifter, discard Emrakul, the Promised End. And we do get cast triggers on Eldrazi because it is casting. So target opponent is obviously our one opponent. And we do have a good blocker against these things now, so we'll be able to swing one of them in. Swing in Muldrotha so they can't recast the Maelstrom Wanderer, I think. And just as it gets good, our opponent decides to scoop it, unfortunately. Yeah, we were going to draw another 7 there to the Jingataxius, and then I think our opponent had a fetch land there. We would have cracked it and failed to find. Might have played what we draw into, might not have done. Definitely would have swung in with the Muldrotha into the Eldrazi to kill off Muldrotha so they can't recast stuff. Might have swung in with Jodah or Maelstrom Wanderer as well. I can't remember what the board is now that I've been kicked out into the lobby. But yeah, managing to stabilise against an extra couple of turns in the early game from our opponent, that's pretty damn good. I think a lot of players would have scooped there, but once again we show on the channel why you don't quit early. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.